Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Coach's Corner University podcast. I am your host, Paul O'Neid, and I'm going to do a much better job now of starting the podcast by letting you know that Coach's Corner University is accepting registrations. And if you're interested in joining our Coach's Corner U community, we are giving away a $300 discount on a lifetime membership to our Coach's Corner U Essentials. So if you use code BEEFCAKE300 on the website, you get $300 off, lifetime access to our community. There's over 150 hours of continuing education, lectures and content, case studies, and everything like that. Plus, you get to interact with me, which is always a plus. Today, I am joined by a coach who I highly respect. He comes highly recommended, and I'm really excited to dive in and pick his brain. Matt Burzacott, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, man, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
And it's my pleasure. My pleasure. The mutual connection here is Austin Stout, who's been on the podcast a couple of times. You work very closely with Austin, and he speaks very highly of you. And you're someone who I've followed for a while in terms of like bodybuilding coaches. You've really started to set yourself apart, and I want to learn how.
Oh man, dude, I appreciate that. You mentioned that briefly before we got started, and that really tickled my fancy. Thank you.
You know, I like to butter my client, my
biscuits.
Butter you up and get you ready to go. So tell me a little bit about, how you've become the coach you are today. Like, where did it all start? I assume it just started with a love of bodybuilding and then continued.
Yeah. I think like many, I started training when I was 12. I would have started earlier if my mom would have let me. Like I wanted to when I was like 5, 6, 7, I grew up. How old are you?
36.
Perfect. So I'm a little ahead of you, but I grew up, I still call it WWF. You know what I mean? Like I grew up watching that and Ninja Turtles and action figures. And I was just infatuated with, like the Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan and anybody with muscle. So like ever since I can remember, that's how I wanted to be. And then unfortunately as a kid, I wasn't that. I was skinny, like skinny.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say I got made fun of it, but people definitely brought it up a lot. And then I got into sports, mostly football. Finally, when I was 12, my parents bought me a Joe Weider weight bench that I put I put in my basement. It was the one that had like the leg extension, leg curl thing at the end. I didn't know what it was for, never used it. So it was just, bench press and curls, get home from school, go straight down to the basement, the unfinished basement, blast the radio. And, I'd do bench press and curls and shoulder press and maybe some bent over rows, for 2 hours straight. You have no idea what you're doing, but I would do that every single day. And then when I was 13 or 14, I finally went into an actual gym. And actually had a good friend back then. He was into bodybuilding magazines. So he was already getting Flex and stuff because he had older brothers. And so I'd go over there and we'd look at him. And then I started going to the gym and training with him and actually doing legs and following an actual split. And then from there, I just exploded. I didn't gain a lot of, I did gain a lot of weight. I was like 115 as a freshman and I was like, but I graduated at high school at like 185 and I'm 5'10". I was shredded, was super strong. I could bench 405.
Holy shit.
So when I say blew up, it blew up is relative. I was super strong. Everyone thought I was on steroids and I wasn't. That made me so mad. So I responded very quickly. And then from there, I wanted to play college football. I actually didn't play college football. We can get into this at some point at another point in the podcast because I had anxiety so bad. I'm very open to, I've dealt with like anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation. Since I was 6, 7, since I can remember.
Jeez.
And so, I didn't end up going to college because I couldn't leave my house. It was that bad. Like anything abnormal in my day, I couldn't leave my house. Training was really the only thing that I knew and I felt comfortable with it and I loved it. So I started getting Flex magazine as a teenager. I don't know if you used to read that or not, but they used to fly out do you remember they used to fly out the teenage national winner to Venice every year to train with Charles Glass and usually Flex Wheeler, Chris Cormier. So man, I saw that when I'm 15, 16. I'm like, oh man, I'm doing that, And I didn't go to college, so I knew immediately, like, okay, I'm gonna be a bodybuilder now. I went to community college, but I didn't go play football. And so It's like, now I can just bodybuild. And so I ended up doing my first show when I was 18. I did the Teenage Nationals twice when I was 18 and 19, and that's where I got started. I was a pretty good teenager. I didn't ever win. I got second to Steve Kuklo. I lost by 1 point.
Dude, that's pretty good company to keep.
Yeah, as we go on, and we get with the competitive side of things, you'll start to realize the theme of my career basically was that. Kind of running into that, which I'm sure we'll get into. But that's where I started, and then growing up, being in Iowa, where I grew up and lived my whole life, most of my whole life. I'm in Florida now, but it wasn't really like the hotbed for bodybuilding, and so I kind of became the only person in that area that was really doing it. And then 2009, I had someone ask me to help them, to coach them. He even offered me money right away, and I was like, whoa, okay. So I started in 2000. I remember the guy's name. His name was Monty Kaufman, and he was my very first client. And then it was 2008 or 2009. And then he referred me somebody who's still like my best friend to this day. His name is Tavish Steele. And that was my second client. And from there, it just built,
It strikes me like, number one, I think the fact that you're really open about the anxiety and depression is important, because especially these days, there's a lot of people who will talk about it, but I feel like some of them wear it almost like as an identity. Dude, you're in a front-facing position and deal with people all day. How did you get to a point where you couldn't leave your house, and I'm assuming there was a social anxiety piece to that, to being in front of 50, 60, 100 people on a monthly basis, helping them navigate life problems? That's a big stretch.
Yeah, I've never really thought about it honestly like that before. Well, the thing that's interesting about bodybuilding for me was, so I told you I played football. So like the way that my anxiety worked, it was very, it was everything based, dude. It was social, it was performance, it was anything outside of my normal day. I would immediately wake up and start throwing up.
Oh, geez.
And so every Friday, football games, I'd wake up and immediately, that was my routine. That was my programming. That's what my subconscious mind was set to do. I just go and throw up. And then of course I can't eat all day because I'm a nervous wreck. So, I would stay home until noon, because that's the latest you could stay home, or go to school and then still play in the game. So every Friday, everybody knew it, and everybody knew it too. He'll be here at noon. Everybody knew I had bad anxiety growing up. Like everybody knew that. Everybody knew I always threw up. I mean, there are more days in my life, probably at my age now, that I've vomited than not vomited. But, that's what I dealt with. And then for some reason, football, there's 22 guys. You're one of 22 guys out there with a helmet on. Like, once the game started, I'd be fine. But the weird thing about bodybuilding is I remember I was 18. My parents actually went with me to my very first show. I wake up in my hotel room the morning of prejudging, and I was perfectly fine. And, that's when I kind of was like, I think I'm meant to do this. It felt normal. It felt fine. Now, a lot of that might have had to do with dieting and being so hungry that, maybe I just basically David Goggins myself to just become desensitized. And it was, and my anxiety was gone for a long time. But then as I got older again, all that came back. And as far as like dealing with people on a one-on-one basis, that's never bothered me. Like I've always actually thrived in that setting, communicating with people, talking to people, connecting with people. That's actually what I'm best at. So for some reason, that was never an issue. That was always natural to me. It was always just, especially if it's, online, because I can be in my own, it's more so like being outside of my environment. Like physically would do it to me.
It seems like, the amount of autonomy and the amount of control associated with bodybuilding, and that like you are the person in the driver's seat the whole time.
Yeah.
That kind of was almost like a calming thing for you.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's probably very, very common. I think it's very, very common, because I think bodybuilding attracts, everyone's broken as it is already. We've all got, right? But like bodybuilding attracts especially broken people or people that have trauma that they've got to deal with and channel it. And, you know, there was that. And then the other thing it was doing for me was it helped me build my, and it's doing, most people, this is what it's doing for them, whether they want to admit it or not, but we're building our entire identity through it, all of our self-worth, all of our self-love. So it was my armor that I needed, and that's not a bad thing. It was just what I needed at the time to at least give me some, you know, swagger and self-confidence, right? And then as we get older, we should evolve in other ways.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the armor, because like I literally have a tattoo on my forearm of armor, because that was exactly what training was for me.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm going to build this body and this persona, or even now, like, you know, tattoos on my neck. Like, if you were to look at me on the street, you'd be like, that guy's a scary dude, but it's fake, right? It's just this exterior thing. But the other piece to that is I find, and even in my own trajectory as a coach, when I was younger, I never dealt with any sort of hardship. Like I had like really great home life. Everything was cool. So when I got to the university setting, especially moving to the US, where for people not familiar with Canada, there's not a really big equity gap. Most people are around the middle. So there's some rich people, very, very few poor people. Most people have it pretty good. I moved to Tampa and work at USF. And now it's like people are either really rich, really fucking broke. And I had no ability to empathize because my hard, quote unquote, was not very hard. But I noticed for myself as I encountered hardship in my life and I had my first experiences with anxiety, it was through those points where it almost made me able to relate to people a lot better.
Sure. Yes.
Because you find this way of soothing yourself and calming yourself where you can pass along those lessons to the people that you're working with. Do you find like your experiences have helped you with relationship building?
I mean, I couldn't have said that better myself. You nailed it, man. Like, yes. So where I'm at today, you know, I can look back on it and everything makes sense. You know, like everything that I experienced and went through has for sure added and enhanced my ability to do what I do today, and moving forward outside of coaching, because I know exactly why I'm here now. You know, I'm here like alive, which isn't, you know, an answer. Ultimately, the root of all that anxiety was I needed that answer. Ultimately, it didn't have anything to do with my upbringing either. You know, like I had great parents. I grew up, you know, in a normal, you know, in Des Moines, Iowa. You know, there's nothing in my life that would have presented me that should have presented me with crippling anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideation. It just doesn't make sense. So there's answers that I've needed my entire life that those have got answered in the last couple of years, which I'll let you decide if we want to get into any of that or not. But to answer your question, going through those experiences has helped me empathize, because I didn't know this until recently, but like, you know, with recently, like the last 5 years as an adult, but I've always been an empath. And I never really knew what that was, you know, but I'm picking up everybody else's energy. I'm feeling what other people are feeling. I just thought that was normal. You know, if I see somebody going through something, I'm like imagining it happening to me, thinking 37,000 steps ahead for that person and what they need to do, you know, and like, so I've gotten the answers to figure out like why I am the way that I am, and which ultimately has led me to be able to help other people within my coaching. You know, before this started, you had asked you like what really has been the difference for me, like these last couple years and beginning to, you know, have more success. It's helping people. I'm able to relate to people and they can relate to me, and there's a connection that I have with people, and I'm able to help them unfuck themselves mentally.
I think like you hit the nail on the head there, because like when people look at coaching, I think especially people unfamiliar with what real coaching is, they see it almost like a transaction. They see it as, I'm going to pay you for this service. But what is really happening is you're engaging in a relationship, and it's a long-term process of building a relationship with somebody where, man, everything is involved, right? Your home life, your work life, your personal disposition. And I'm a big believer that personal development ultimately leads to professional development. And if, what you're saying is exactly along that same vein, is like, as you have progressed in your own personal journey,
Yep.
the business almost just takes care of itself.
Yes. And I've never even thought about, I'm not a good business person. I'm a horrible business person. Like I've never once thought about, and no one should ever take this advice. I'm not saying that I'm right about anything that I'm doing. I'm just sharing my experience and how I got here. But the only thing I've ever thought about while doing this is just doing the best job I can for whoever I have. I've never thought about acquiring new people. I've never thought about acquiring more people. I'm really horrible on Instagram. I wish I could delete it. Like,
me too.
Like all aspects of that goes, my accounting skills are horrible. I try to just keep my focus on doing the best, like just giving my people what they need. I'm sure sometimes I fall short of that, but I think they all, at least I think most, if not all of them, would say that they can feel that at least. So they know that's what they're getting. And really, like, being on the athlete side of things, that's really all we want. I just want to know I have somebody that's in it with me, that's actually has my best interest at heart, that's in it with me, that cares and knows what they're doing. And that's it.
Dude, to me, that's good business. Like, it's something that I harp on week after week after week on the podcast with every coach that I have on, because every single one of them in their own way has said something similar. It's like, all I do is focus on the person in front of me and making sure they get the best version of me possible. And that inevitably leads to a thriving business. There are so many people in this industry where, okay, turn Instagram and Facebook off. Do you still make a living?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm golden. I barely use it.
I would still never have to worry about money.
Yeah.
But for most people, that's not the case.
Right.
And that's a really scary thing, because at any point, these platforms could be eliminated. You look at, TikTok, it might get banned. I think that's past now or something like that. But what if it got banned? Would your coaching business fall apart? No. If it would, that's a testament to you're probably not doing the best job that you can for the people that you're working with.
Yeah. That and turnover rate. Like, I don't have, like, dude, I don't.
Me neither. Yeah.
Like, people have been with me, everyone I have, besides the people I've got within this past year, it's like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 plus years. I never really I started thinking about that recently, and I'm like, man, like, I don't know, I must be doing something okay.
I'd say you're doing pretty not bad.
Yeah, because, and I've just, like, while you're in it, and then we say this to all of our clients, like, they have us because we can see the things that they can't see. It's the same for us, like, professionally. I'm like, I still view myself as just like someone that's just helping people be the best that they can at this sport. And then that's carrying over to helping them just, be better overall. And they keep me around. I don't know.
Well, here's the thing, man. Like, how many clients have you worked with where, let's say you've helped them achieve something that they never thought possible, and then all of a sudden they go get a promotion at work?
Dude, oh man, yeah.
Or, they decide that maybe they're in a toxic relationship and they decide to leave that relationship. Like, these are life wins that, we're not going to take credit for, but we know that we played a really important role in allowing them to see that version of themselves.
Dude, that's why we do this, man.
100%.
And we see it over and over, dude. And the credit thing I want to touch on too, because I think coaches get way too much credit sometimes, and it drives me crazy. It's just ego. It's this ego contest of everybody wants credit. And if you don't give me this mushy long credit post on it, it's, I think sometimes coaches get too much credit. But yeah, dude, when you see someone have all of these personal wins and you see, like, dude, remember, 4 years ago you were doing this, and look at you now, man, and you have that connection with people, and they genuinely are grateful for it. And I'm a crier. Like, I get choked up every single time because dude, it's because of what you mentioned earlier. I didn't really, I guess, think about it, but me going through my own experiences and trying to overcome them myself, like, I know that these other people have all had the same thing.
Yeah. Funny story. So we were at the Toronto Pro Show, and Austin was coaching with my wife, And we were both so excited when she won that we both fucked up videotaping it. So neither.
Oh no, she got no video.
I was crying, so I was crying, so I like double clicked the button so I couldn't get it on video. And then Austin was so excited he dropped his phone.
Yeah.
But I'm like, that to me is, man,
that's what it's all about, man.
And something I do want to highlight, because I do want to give you your flowers here, because you're talking about things, but I also saw it firsthand with your client Seb. Like, this dude missed out on his pro card in the fall.
Yeah, he did Canadian Nationals last year and missed by one spot there.
Right, so he missed by one spot, decided to keep prepping to the Arnold, missed again, decided to keep prepping.
Yeah.
You don't do that unless you have someone in your corner that you trust and that has your back no matter what. So you had to have played a massive role in him just being able to do that.
He says so. I'm not going to say so, but he says so.
I'm going to say so.
He's someone you would get along with really, really great too.
Yeah, I had a pleasure to meet him. He's a super nice guy, well deserved. Like, he looked incredible.
Yeah, him and he's been with me for a year, not quite 2 years. It was like we did that in about a year and a half, a little over a year and a half. And so like I would consider him one of my newer people, but he's someone that him and I just gel. You have certain clients that you just click with more than other ones.
Yeah.
Him and I did that, and we established it very quickly. And so that played a huge role in it. So he trusts me 1,000,000% with everything, which is, makes it a lot easier on us.
For sure.
Because there were times, man, to your point, like when you have a stretch like that, which first of all, we pushed it off, or we chose to continue pushing because he was already maxed out at his weight cap, like weighing 3 pounds over out of his mind, like the morning of weigh-in. So it's like, and I knew he was he had 3 years off from competing prior to that. So I'm like, dude, we're right here. Let's just keep sending it. As long as he felt okay. And obviously we did labs and everything, and everything was fine. We got to just keep going, because what are we going to do? Have you take a year off and not put on any muscle? And so that was the ultimate driver behind my decision with that, is I knew what he was doing the previous few years. We originally decided to do the first 2 shows based off of, he wasn't even sure he was going to compete at all. And I was like, you've been away for 3 years. Let's just do it. Let's just get up there and see how it goes. And then it turned into what it turned into. And then I did have another girl. I had a girl turn pro there too, Alicia, that had a similar.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, in bikini. And,
that's right. Yep, I did know that.
Similar thing with her. Like, I got super close with her. She trusted me. I had a phone conversation with her a little over a year and a half ago. She had never won anything yet, or done anything nationally. And I'm like, listen, this is going to be a long process, but like, we just hit it off. And she's someone, also my client, like her and Seb and other clients that I've had 3 people turn pro this year so far, and all 3 of them have been with me for a while. The Jesse that won Junior USA's earlier this year has been with me for 3 years, but all of them do what most coaches won't talk about, because they want all the credit, is all the work that they do on their own. You know what I mean? Like, I'll bring up certain things or certain gaps and things that they need to work on from a self-developmental point, not anything to do with bodybuilding, that I think can, make their bodybuilding better ultimately. But most of the time when you bring those up to people, they don't do anything about it. They're like, oh yeah, that sounds good, I'll do that. And then they don't. But they all did. And not only did they do that, like they go above and beyond on their own, working on their own stuff. And so it's been really cool to see that play out on the stage.
So let's backpedal a little bit. Let's return back to, young Matt as a coach. You're starting to build this roster based on referrals and just based on, you being a good person and investing into the people that you're working with. What does your coaching trajectory look like at that point? Because I know at some point you joined up with Matt Jansen, you're part of Camp Jansen. Now you're working with Austin Stout. Like, what did your coaching trajectory look like past that initial starting point?
Okay. Yeah. Good question. Yeah. Thanks for bringing us back. You're going to find you need to bring me back to, cause I'll go off on whatever. So yeah, 2009, I kind of started with just doing local people. That kind of expanded referral wise from friends they knew in other states and stuff. But if I can remember, I probably was stuck at like, and I think this is common for a lot of people, I was stuck in that like 25 to 35 client range, right?
Yep.
And I worked full time at Wells Fargo Home Mortgage at the time. Is 9 out of every 10 people in Des Moines, that's where they worked.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, I would do both. And then 2014, I would say, is when I got my big break. And most people don't even know this anymore because it's been so long ago now. But John Meadows brought me on to work underneath him.
That's a pretty good company to keep. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had hired him to prep me for the Nationals that year, 2013. And we hit it off. We recognized that we had the same thought processes along things, which was a huge deal for me because, he was him and I hadn't done really anything yet. And so for me, it was super cool when he offered me that. I mean, I was almost shocked. So he brought me on and I coached under him for a couple of years. And then I got into a bit of a toxic relationship with someone that I had to get away from coaching. I had to basically get away from everything. But so I got away from bodybuilding for a few years. Then COVID happened and I didn't have anything to do. And Matt and I had been friends for a while, a couple years up to that point. And he had called me in 2020 and said that he was starting his own coaching team. And I was the first person he thought of and offered me the spot. And he didn't say that Matt's so great. He goes, so what are you going to do now? Because I had a gym in Denver, Colorado, like a small, 2,000 square foot gym where I just was a strength coach at a high school for the football team.
Cool.
And so we have a lot in common, actually, you and I.
Yeah.
And so he's like, so what are you going to do now? And I'm like, I don't know. He goes, why don't you coach again? And I'm like, dude, nobody knows who I am anymore. Like I'm like gone, I've been gone for years. And he goes, well, I'm starting a team. And then he offered me the job and I'm like, okay, the spot. And I'm like, well, hell yeah. And then I moved to Florida. That's when I met Nick Gloff.
Yep.
Because him and I were part of the original team. I actually got us an apartment together. Nick and I lived together for the first year down here in Florida.
Oh my God. I could only imagine that situation. Dude,
we had this shitty little 2-bedroom apartment, right? And nothing in it, nothing in it. This tiny little table. We didn't care.
Yeah.
Our mattresses on a floor. We didn't care. But it was fucking awesome. And, I didn't know anything about him. I just knew that he was a kid that knew a lot about training and he was super freaky strong back then. Remember, he was squatting 8 plates and
nasty strong,
right? And I had never seen anything like that before, honestly.
Yeah.
I'd seen Ronnie Coleman do it in videos and stuff, but I'd never seen somebody.
Never seen a 23-year-old kid doing it.
Yeah, right in front of my face.
Yeah.
Right? And so then we lived together when you live with someone, and then we were on the same fucked up schedule of staying up all night and sleeping in and when you live with someone, dude, every night him and I would sit there and talk for hours about everything.
Yep.
About everything. And those are going to be some of the best memories of my life. And him and I will be brothers for life because, there were a couple moments where we were just a couple nights. Well, he said to me, he's like, dude, I've never had a friend I could talk to like this before. And I'm like, I thought about it and I'm like, shit, man, me neither. And, and then he happens to be a genius, literally the smartest person I've ever met in my entire life. And I don't think of myself as someone that's that intelligent, but he gave me space to try to and I still have trouble. I've gotten a lot better with it, and he helped me with this because it kind of forced me to I have so much going on up here, and it's hard for me to get it all out sometimes. Mm-hmm. And when you're talking to someone that's that smart, you kind of don't want to say a lot, but he never made me feel any type of way. He always gave me my space to try to get out what I was trying to, what I was thinking about. And then we know each other so well now that he can basically articulate for me if I'm, he'll see my wheels spinning and then he'll just, say what I'm thinking. But
I love that. That's something I speak to my wife about this quite often because I'm in a position now in life and in business where I'm like the big brother in a lot of the relationships that I'm in.
Yeah.
So I don't have that person on my level where I can like just sit on a couch and talk about shit like that.
Dude, I miss.
That's so valuable.
It's especially for people like us that think a lot. Right.
I resorted to journaling. I've got like fucking I journal on my computer, so I got like Word docs, like hundreds and hundreds of pages of Word docs, just
me too,
thinking out loud. So you worked with Matt for probably 3 years?
2020, 2021, 2022. Yeah, 3 years. Yep.
3 years. And then ultimately decided to go in a different direction, started working with Austin. I do have to ask, like at some point it had to have gone through your mind of like, should I go at this alone?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I was considering that at the point that I had decided to leave Camp Jansen. That's what I was initially going to do, actually. I had found Austin because I hired him for his mentorship.
Okay.
So that needs to be mentioned.
Oh yeah.
And that was in the beginning of 2022.
Okay.
So I'm not the smartest, but I'm smart enough to realize when someone's smarter than me, and I'm smart enough to realize trends. And I'm smarter, and I have enough awareness to know where my gaps are. And so at that point, I didn't need to do that. I had enough clients. I was good. I could have just kept doing what I was doing, but I realized like, hey, there's this whole other thing out here that people just want to label as functional medicine. Everything has to have a label, right? Really, it's just understanding how the body works and how everything flows together and works together, and how we can, basically maximize those processes. So Nick, actually, I knew who Austin was, but I didn't know how good he was, to be honest. I didn't know a lot about him. I've always kind of just stayed in my own bubble. I don't consume much bodybuilding content, so I never really knew who was doing what. But Nick had mentioned that everybody that he gets that's fucked up, he sends to Austin and he fixes them all. And I knew Nick well enough to know that if Nick says somebody's good at something, because Nick is very good at that. He can tell who's really good at what they do very quickly. I'm not so good at that because I assume everybody's good at what they do.
Naive.
Yeah. So I contacted Austin about the mentorship thing because I just wanted to clean up and learn on the back end. I'm already here doing the job for 13 years.
Yeah.
I should get some training. So I knew what I was doing and why I knew what I was doing and I knew it was working, but I wanted to learn the whys.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I had reached out to Austin. He was mentoring me, and I had mentioned to him, I was going to go on my own. And then I think a day later, it might've been the same day, I think it was a day later, he said, hey, I was thinking, what would you think about, joining me and coaching with me? And honestly, I thought about it for 5 seconds and I was like, yeah,
yeah,
why not? Because the way that at least the structure, at least the way that I feel with him was there's no hierarchy. It's like a thing we're doing together and not he's here and I'm here.
Yep.
I don't feel that from him. And I don't operate with that mindset, and I don't deal with that mindset. I don't operate from this hierarchy idea. And so that's the reason why I decided, I'm like, it would be cooler to just, be alongside someone, who we see things kind of the same way, right? So that's how that ultimately happened.
I think it's really you mentioned it, but I don't think it gets, iterated enough, especially when talking about leadership, where if you're a good leader, there is no hierarchy, right? And something that I think Austin does very well, it's something that I try to do with our company is I might be the most experienced person on this team, or I might have a certain level of expertise, but each person on our team is the best at something.
Yes.
And while you and Austin both coach bodybuilding, I'm sure there are things that you are much better at than than Austin at. He has a better expertise on like the functional health side of things. And when you're part of a team, you get to collaborate on stuff.
Yeah.
And something that maybe clients don't get to see, but is absolutely an added value.
Yes.
Especially when you yourself have this gap, Austin can fill it with, fill that knowledge gap for you. And then you can pass that knowledge along to the clients. Like, that's a win-win for everybody.
Exactly. And Austin's do that, man. I can't talking about a genius and people that are just out of this stratosphere intelligent. He's that, but he also knows how to communicate with people. He doesn't sensationalize himself at all. I wish he would more.
I do too. And you mentioned, like, I didn't really know who Austin was. And the only thing that went through my head when you said that was, yeah, no one does.
I know. And isn't it crazy? Like, he should be everywhere.
If you went through, like, and anyone who's listening, if you went to his YouTube channel and you could get over the fact that he doesn't have editing, he doesn't have thumbnails, he doesn't even have horizontal, like, he doesn't have even landscape mode videos. They're like vertical videos.
Yeah.
You could get like a master's level education in functional health just from his YouTube channel.
Dude, easily.
And I fucking love that.
But that's just how he is, man, and it's, the more you get to know the guy, it's like he just sees things from a whole different perspective that most people don't have, and so I can't, I guess I got to do a better job at pumping his tires for him, because he's not going to do it.
Well, and you talk about, like, someone, you said you're smart enough to know when you're not smart in an area, and you have the self-awareness to ask for help. Like, Austin is someone who I highly respect, and he comes to me for second thoughts and like, hey, I'm planning on doing this with the business. What do you think? I'm like,
well, because he knows where
I think you're okay.
but he knows where his gap is. He knows where his gaps are too. He's very self-aware. Yeah,
I think we all could stand to be even more self-aware than we are, because that's how we grow. Like, I was speaking to someone today at the gym about I'm not going to name any names, but someone that we know who is very one-track minded. He's a younger coach, and I was like, yep, he is the epitome of Dunning-Kruger, right? As you learn more, you realize how little you actually know, and that's when the true growth comes in. And I'm sure even at this stage, 2009, you're running into like 15 years in coaching, bro. There's still stuff that you don't know, and you probably know, like, there's more and more and more gaps that you're realizing, like, oh man, like, I really got to fill this. And like,
all the time, even though this is, if you do this long enough, it's all pattern recognition, really, but I'm still going to run into cases that force me to go outside my box and really think for sure. I don't handle functional cases like he does and Trey does and Aaron does. I need to give a shout out to the whole team, because we have a group of people that just we're not, the flashiest, but we can just flat out coach the shit out of people. And, they're fixing functional cases that are way beyond what I can do. I know just enough to keep bodybuilders as healthy as possible and to do things as smart as they possibly can. They handle all of the super complicated stuff where they're fixing people left and right.
I want to circle back to something that you mentioned earlier in the conversation. You mentioned that you're an empath and you take on the emotions and you take on the things that others, might be projecting. It's something that I see very often, especially with younger coaches who don't recognize that tendency.
Yeah. They
get really overwhelmed and really burnt out because they almost feel like their clients are dumping on them and they take it all on. Yeah. When in reality, it's just their own internal dialogue that does that for them.
Yeah.
What are maybe some strategies that you've implemented to obviously capitalize on your self-awareness, but also set those boundaries to say, like, this isn't mine to hold?
I think it's just that right there, dude. Just coming to that realization, and you mentioning that inner self dialogue we all have, because this is something that I've seen every coach go through. I went through it. You've gone through it. We've all gone through this phase where we just get burnt the fuck out because we're so overextending ourselves and we're thinking about it 24/7. Because we think that's what we have to do, because we think that, if we're not doing that, we don't care. And I think being okay with just, I've gotten a lot better at just setting those boundaries as far as when I'm going to message people back, when they're going to message me. But like, you'll hear coaches saying, so-and-so is messaging me this and this, these people need this and these people need this and these people need this. I'm like, is it really these people? Would they really even care if you waited to message them back until tomorrow or a later time? Or, I'm just giving one example, but we create this own pressure and this own dialogue in our head that we have to be available 24/7 to these people, when I don't think the overwhelming majority of them expect that.
I think it comes down, like, the expectation is one where ultimately I think the ownership of expectation lies on the coach, right? So when someone signs on, you should have some sort of contract or some sort of, guidelines on this is how frequent you can expect follow-ups, communications are answered within these timelines. And as long as you uphold those, no one's going to be upset with you.
There's no problems. Yeah.
There's no problems.
I don't ever.
The other piece to that is, like, number one, if you always answer your clients right away, you're giving them no agency, no ownership, and no accountability to themselves. They offload everything onto you and they never learn anything about themselves.
Yeah.
I think that's more detrimental than it is helpful.
Yeah.
The third piece to that is when you give them that space, it allows you to be more present when you respond.
Yeah.
Because if you're responding to shit all the time, you're on the go, you're not giving that person your full effort.
Exactly what I was going to get into is I don't do that anymore. I used to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do that anymore because for that exact reason, like, one, we're already looking at our phone and our computer screen enough, and I don't think people realize how much that fucks us up.
Do you have your red light glasses on? Glasses?
Yeah, I try to. So just from that perspective, is it's not always good to be plugged in like that all the time. Like, coaches that's why they're getting burnt out, is because they're never unplugging from that. So you kind of have to set work hours for yourself. I'm sure I'm not saying anything new that other people haven't said, but you kind of just have to set work hours for yourself to work. And for me, a lot of times that's at night, actually. And that's something that I've had to get over on my own, because trying to conform to the way that everybody else is doing it. And I finally just said, fuck it. I'm doing it my own way. Mm-hmm. I'm going to respond to people when I want to respond to people, when I'm in the right frame of mind. And, unfortunately or unfortunately, that's for me usually at nighttime.
Okay.
So I'll respond to the format of my day is I'll respond to people in prep first thing. So in the morning. And then, everybody else outside of that, like when we get off this call, I'm going to hammer out my updates for this morning. And, they all know that. So that works for me. So finding something that works for you, even though it may be completely different than what everybody else is doing schedule wise, do what works for you. Because I want to like look through the update and not be rushed and give a well thought out response when it's time to do so, because that's a very big piece to what we were saying earlier of just focusing on taking care of the people and that you have. I mean, if you're out at the grocery store running errands or at your daughter's dance recital and you're responding, are you really in the right frame of mind to be making a decision? And ultimately, when it comes down to something like prep and there's a timeline you're working on, it comes down to making this nonstop stream of decisions that make the most sense in that timeline, and those decisions being correct in the end is ultimately how you end up to where you end up. So like, I want to make sure I'm in a good space to decide, what the next steps are.
You hit it's funny that you mentioned the grocery store, because I had this conversation with somebody recently where I was like, a lot of the coaches that I work with are powerlifting coaches, And so we do a lot of video reviews.
Yeah.
If you're in the line at the grocery store and you're reviewing someone's videos, are you really giving them your best attention? And are you being as critical as you potentially could be? Absolutely not. Or are you sitting watching TV with your partner and answering videos on your phone? Because then you're being a really fucking shitty partner.
Yeah.
That client is not going to remember the time they had to wait to the next day for you to review their squat. But your partner is absolutely going to remember that time when they wanted to relax with you on the couch and you were on your phone.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's something like we have to, if there was a hill that I could die on with regards to like being present, it would be that.
I can get behind that. I can totally get behind that. If I had a partner, my schedule may change, right? So I don't. Right. So with the way I'm doing it now works for me. But, if I, hopefully one day I, find someone to put up with my shit, If I can find someone to put up with my shit, you could definitely find someone to put up with your shit. I don't know. We haven't even got into any of that yet. I would do what you're saying. I think that's super important because you gotta know when to put it away, because I think coach burnout is it's a very real thing that isn't really talked about that much, but it happens to all of us.
I think people feel like if they use the word burnout or they use, or they even voice the fact that coaching does take something out of them, it almost by proxy lets people know that, oh, you're not passionate, or this isn't your thing. You're not in love with it. And I'm like, listen, anything in life, the dosage makes the poison.
Yeah.
Even the most amazing thing can kill you in the end. Actually, it's funny I say that because I was fucking with my wife the other day and I was like, there's only one thing in the world that more of won't kill you. And she's like, what? I'm like, love.
You should start making reels with that shit, man.
Man, I say a lot of stuff and I'm like, man, I really should record that. And then I completely forget to.
I know. Well, if you record it, then you don't, yeah.
It loses it.
Yeah.
But I think I love what you said about like making your own schedule, because it's important to figure out like what works for you. For me, I do my best work first thing in the morning. Like 5 a.m. is my time. Like I'm a fucking rock star at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
At 8:30 p.m., I'm an absolute moron.
Yeah.
So if I'm responding to messages past 8:30, I'm like doing my best to take my time and be thoughtful with it. But ultimately, like, even though I want to shut off at 8:30 and I'm usually really diligent about it, sometimes it extends past that and it has to happen. When you're dealing with the volume of clients that you do, did you get to a point where you're like, hey, this is my cap, I can't go beyond this because then service starts to decline?
Yes. Yeah, I hit that. I spent a decent amount of time at I never count. I'm not one of those people that ever counted, but if I had to guess, it was between 130 and 140.
Holy
that was like absolutely not. And just the way that I do things, and I'm not somebody that has the most energy anyways. And so for me, this takes more energy than I think it takes probably most people. So I just knew that it just felt like I was running an assembly line at that point, Well,
if you're doing 20 check-ins a day,
that's a lot.
That's a lot of fucking check-ins.
But to some people, they wouldn't think that's a lot.
I have a bit of a different thought on that. I would much rather charge more and provide a more catered service. Yeah. Like the most amount of clients I've ever had was 85, I think. But that's again like reviewing videos of training sessions for 85 clients.
Well, see, that's the thing. What are you doing in the check-ins, right?
Exactly.
So I'm doing that too. I'm reviewing videos and everything else in check-ins. So like 100, it's not, I was doing it, but I was working from the second I woke up till the second I went to bed every day. And it's like, it wasn't sustainable.
Yeah. It's also like, I forget what the number is, but it's like some dude's number. Like you can only form so many relationships at one time.
Yeah.
And I want my business to be fully associated with great relationships.
Yeah.
And you can't do that when your volume is that high.
Yeah. Your biggest fear is the same as mine I would imagine I'm terrified of someone saying they had a horrible experience.
Yeah.
Or I didn't help him at all or something,
Yeah, he didn't give me the attention I wanted, or I felt like it was a transactional thing where I wasn't getting responses and things like that. And that's like when we started the conversation, I mentioned a lot of clients initially look at coaching as a transaction. And like, that's one thing that I do not want to be associated with my business. I don't want anyone to think that this is a transactional relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. Same. I never really thought about it like that, but yeah, it's exactly the same. Yeah.
Let's circle back to Matt as an athlete, because you did have a ton of success as an athlete. You didn't turn pro, but I'm sure we'll get into that. What has been like ultimately, from the tone of the conversation I'm getting, that like you probably aren't going to compete anymore, or you've kind of given that up? Like what's the status there? Because for all intents and purposes, you came very close to a pro card.
Yeah, I missed it by one spot 4 times.
Oh, okay.
So even like the 2017 USAs, I lost by 1 point to Patrick Moore.
Jesus, man.
Yeah. So like, yeah, I had 4 times I missed it by 1 spot. So that was, kind of the theme of my career. I would never say never that I'm going to compete again. Although I will say I'm going to be 39 in 2-3 weeks. And so obviously I understand that window is closing to do what I would want to do. And I wouldn't, I don't have anything against people that compete in the Masters division. That's just not for me.
Me neither. I'll never do it. Never.
Yeah, that's not a route that's an option for me. So with that being said, my window, I understand, is closing. So that's something that I would need to decide very, somewhat soon. I'm trying to not think about it too much. I've just been focusing on completely, other things, and everyone that knows me knows that I had, an experience a couple years ago where I wouldn't call it a near-death experience, but kind of. I wasn't actually pronounced dead or anything, but I definitely could have died. I had an experience. Mm-hmm. So that doesn't concern me, because I knew, as much as people want to blame any time that we have something go wrong with our health, especially our heart, people are like, steroids, bodybuilding.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, I'm not so naive to think, that it played absolutely zero role at all, but you guys don't understand my mental health for those first 36 years of my life. Mm-hmm. And the state that I was in that whole time. Like, I'm literally a different person now. I went through this awakening process, we'll call it, and I've made a lot of changes. And so I wouldn't ever say never. I just don't, it's not really serving any purpose to me right now, at least enough of one for me to feel like I want to do it. Because once you kind of once you're faced with your own mortality, and you go through this process of understanding what the ego is, and going through basically an ego death, it's kind of like, I don't know, I don't really care that, just to be a pro, I don't even give a fuck anymore. It doesn't mean anything to me.
Man, you're preaching to the choir, because so I competed at the highest level possible in powerlifting for a number of years. I was ranked in the top 10 all time in 2 different weight classes, and accumulated a number of injuries to the point where a couple of years ago, I pretty much decided that I would never compete again. And the way that I frame it is I got into powerlifting and training to see how strong could I get. I found it. I found how strong I could get, and I did it. And then that's when I actually decided to do a bodybuilding show.
Okay.
But I did the bodybuilding show because I needed a competitive outlet. I needed something to challenge me. And it gave me that and then some. It was without question the hardest thing I've ever done. But through all that, my identity completely changed. Because if you were to ask me hey man, who are you? Oh, I'm Paul, I'm a powerlifter. And to go through that and be oh, I can't say that anymore.
Yeah.
Who am I?
Yeah.
Why am I here? What am I doing? What's my purpose?
Bro,
and similar awakening, where now I'm sitting here 12 days out from a competition that I never thought that I would actually do. But I'm doing it because I want to do it, not because I have an emotional attachment to it, not because of any other reason that I just want to go on a platform and lift weights for fun.
Bro, yeah, we have way more in common than I even thought. So yeah, I'm just not there yet. I think, if I had to predict, I think I think I'll get there. I'm still just dealing with some other stuff internally that I need to clear, I think, to get there. But I've already kind of had that vision of like, well, I think I can be even better than I was, just going about it in this whole new frame of mind, in this whole new way. And it has a whole meaning to me. And just for the love of training, and just for the simple fact that I want to do it, like do it for the 18-year-old me that had no fucking clue or have any of the wisdom that I have now.
Dude. Yes. I know for a fact. So my plan, after my bodybuilding show, I dealt with like a number of like digestive issues, and I got in touch with Austin. He helped me a great deal with that. And then I hired my coach that I'm working with now for training, Danny LaMartina, who's, I speak about her all the time on the podcast. She's an absolute stud. And if I didn't link up with her and learn all about the reasons why my body was so fucked up from a biomechanical perspective, there's no way I would have even considered it.
Yeah.
And now I'm in a position where it's like, oh, this is like bonus points.
Yeah.
And when I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this meet in, 10 days. I'm going to do this meet in 10 days. I'm going to go out, I'm going to lift weights, I'm going to have fun, shake the rust off. And then in December, that's when I registered for like a much bigger meet, like a pro meet. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do what I plan on doing at that meet. And then I'm going to leave my belt on the platform, and I'm never going to do this again because I'm going out on my terms, the way I want to do it.
Yep.
And then I can finally put it behind me. I can get the monkey off my back.
Yeah.
But I'm not stepping on the platform as Paul the powerlifter.
No.
Paul the husband, Paul the business owner, Paul the coach, Paul, the human being.
Yeah. So on my Instagram, my bio says I am. You're speaking to what that means.
Fuck yeah.
Like we're everything in this world is designed for us to live from our ego, right? And you and I went through a process where that was deconstructed. And so your point, whether it's bodybuilding or another sport or whatever, anybody spends a significant portion of their life thinking that it's important. They form their identity to that. Your ego forms this identity of what you think you are. And then when that gets taken away, it's like, whoa, like your reality crumbles. And, for me and my personality, it was, let me explore that more. It was scary at first, but fuck, let me keep exploring this and really find out who I actually am, because I actually am not my name. I am not a bodybuilder. I am not a coach. I am not, whatever religion, whatever we're forced to like choose to attach to these things that form our identity, which that's what our ego actually is. It's an identity of what we think we are, what we've been groomed. We go through all these experiences through our lives, face all these circumstances. We have all of these, thoughts, emotions, and everything, and we ball it all up and we form this thing called our ego. And then that's what we operate from, this thing that we actually are not, but we think we are. And then you get that all taken away, and it really forces you to do some shit. It breaks people for sure. When people lose it.
I was broken as fuck.
Yeah, dude. I went into isolation for about a year straight, I'm just now like coming out of it, man. Like I still have, days that are hard, but that's the work that people avoid doing. But it's the work that we all need to do. Because we're just programmed. When I mentioned getting people to unfuck themselves, we're all programmed, and we don't even realize we're programmed. And we're operating from this set of beliefs that we think are our own, but they're actually not. They've just been implanted there based off of whatever it is we've been consuming and the environment that we were in.
Fuck. I honestly could not think of a better way to finish off the podcast than that, because I want to be sensitive to your time, and like you said, man, I feel like I could chat with you for hours. So yeah. I'm like, if you want to hop on the podcast again, I would definitely love to have you on for episode 2.
I would love to hop on again to maybe just get into whatever else. But this was an honor, man. And to me, man, this is, I spend a lot of time alone. A lot of us spend a lot of time alone.
Sure.
We're lone wolves. A lot of us are, and probably a lot of people that are watching this are. So to actually have this human connection with somebody that gets it, that as you get older, it's like, that's what this is all about. It's not about all this other fucking bullshit that doesn't matter, man. Because all that we ultimately have is each other and this, you know?
Yeah, 100%. I do like to finish the podcast with some stupid questions.
Cool, that's perfect, yeah.
So some quick hit questions. Do you crack an egg on a flat surface or on the corner of the pan?
Corner of the pan.
Okay. Top 5, dead or alive, people that you would want at a dinner table with you.
Oh, geez. Michael Jordan, Michael Jackson, Muhammad Ali. Jesus is up there.
He's a very popular guest.
Yeah. I like to refer to him. His real name's Yeshua. So Yeshua, dude, one more. Without time to think about it, just because he's on the Deion Sanders. I love Deion Sanders.
I fucking love it. Deion's the fucking man.
Yeah.
You want to talk about a dude who just doesn't give a fuck?
Dude, he has the right idea. He's like, don't let my confidence offend your insecurity. Yeah.
Fuck, I love that. One more, and then the final question. So, what is the craziest thing you've ever done at a gym?
Probably, actually, this is a good story. When I was like 18 or 19, I remember I was doing squats, and I said I put 315 on, and this is relative. This may not be crazy for some people, but for me at the time it was. I said, I'm going to do 100 reps, and I'm not going to rack it until I'm not going to stop until I get 100. So I didn't know what a cluster set was. I was just like, I'm going to do 100 reps. I'm going to stand here and do 100 reps until I do it, right?
Oh my God.
And okay. I did it. And actually Brett Wilkin has a similar story to this, because that was an Iowa thing. So the University of Iowa football, when the kids would get back from winter break, they would do, I think it was only like 50% of their body weight or their max or something. They would do 100 reps, and that's what they had to do. But a bunch of kids got rhabdo from it. And actually Brett got rhabdo from it.
Pussy.
In college. Yeah, what a pussy. So I did that, but with 315, and I racked it, and I felt like I got hit in the back of the head with a baseball bat. And like, I looked at the guy behind me, spot me. I'm like, did you just hit me in the back of the head? And he's like, no. And then I was like, oh God, I don't feel good. So,
oh no.
Of course I go to the bathroom, I'm puking my guts out, but my head is like feeling like it's going to explode. And so I didn't call an ambulance or anything, but I drove myself to the ER, and I'm like, I'm worried that I'm having an aneurysm. Because it felt like that. Try to explain to them what you just did. They have no concept of like how hard it was. That was like, I don't know how many minutes it took me, but like, you're 18, 19, and you don't give a shit.
No.
And they just said everything was fine. They called it weightlifter's headache, but that actually happened to me every time after that. When I would train and do my first hard set, I'd get the same thing for about at least a month, maybe 6 weeks after that. So being 18, guess how I remedied that? I would just take
Advil.
Yeah, 800 milligrams of ibuprofen before I went. No problem,
Oh yeah.
But that's the first story that comes to mind. That was probably the craziest thing I ever did. I never did that again.
That's the best story that anyone's ever told in this podcast.
Really? Oh.
I fucking love that shit. Like, I love when people just do hard shit for the sake of doing hard shit.
Dude, wasn't that what training was for you when you were young?
Yeah, 100%.
I would think of the most impossible thing every day to do, and then do it. And then now we get older, and like the thought of doing some of the stuff when we were younger, like I'd be fucking dead.
Well, here's the thing. So whenever someone says something like that, all I do is I imagine the internet science nerd like pushing up his glasses and going, but the systemic fatigue associated with that would just be too drastic. Yeah. I'm like, bro, just fucking do hard shit. So when I was working at Robert Morris University in Pittsburgh, we drove to Georgetown and visited their strength and conditioning facility. And they had a test with their soccer players. I forget what they called it, but they would unrack 225 and they would have 3 spotters, so one on each side and a back spotter, and they would pull the J hooks off the rack so they could not stop. And I was like, that's fucking badass. So I did that by myself.
Oh,
and I was like, we're gonna do it. Or like, do you remember railroads on the leg press?
Yes.
1 plate for 10, 2 plates for 20, 3 plates for 30, 4, and all the way up and all the way down until you fucking failed.
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't catch, if you did that and you posted it on the internet, people would be like, you're so stupid, that's not optimal. It's like, yeah, but my legs are 6 times the size of your waist. Fuck you.
Yeah. And that's why I tore my pec. I didn't know what tearing a muscle was, you know. I was 21. I didn't know that could even happen. All I knew is it was Monday and it was bench day, and I couldn't wait to hit 405 for 12, you know.
Holy shit.
So yeah,
I'm still trying to hit 405 for 3. And I'm a power lifter.
Yeah, but I was a really shitty deadlifter and squatter. So
fair. I got you on that one.
Well, that's pretty normal, right? If you're really good at pressing, you're usually pretty bad at the other two, or vice versa.
Yeah. I mean, typically if your leverages are good for bench press, they're pretty bad for deadlift. I look like I'd be a good bench presser, but I'm not.
All that matters.
So at least I look strong.
Yeah, that's all that matters.
I used to get this, like I would get people be like, oh, like how much do you squat? And I'd be like, oh, I squat at 805. And they would look at me and then look down and then go, really?
Wow. Yeah.
Like, fuck. Because like I'm a power lifter, so all the mass of my leg is like up in my hip.
Yeah.
I'm like, fuck, man. And that was like killed me with bodybuilding because, you know, I remember I worked with Luke Miller for my prep.
Yeah.
And he's like, so we're not going to do any squats. I'm like,
what?
All right. Like, I'm totally cool with that. Is there a reason? He's like, yeah, because you don't need a bigger ass. Got it.
Good call on his part. Yeah.
Good call. The last question I have for you, this is where I get you to do my job for me.
Oh.
Is there anyone that you would like to see me interview on the podcast? But the caveat is that you have to help me get them on the podcast.
Probably Tavish.
Tavish? Cool.
Gloff has already been on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, we should have you and Gloff on at the same time.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're going to do that.
Yeah, let's do that. Even I started a podcast and they just fizzled out because we're like, we're not the best people to have it because we just didn't feel like talking anymore. So if you want to host it.
I'll host it for sure. I would definitely love to hear that. Like
we have a lot to talk about. The thing that people don't know about Gloff is he's not only just smart with training. Okay.
He's smart with everything.
He's like talking to a fucking computer about everything. So
he's got a sprinkle of autism.
So my gift is I can get him talking. So and you're good at getting people talking too. So we can just let's just feed him.
Dude, I really appreciate your time here, and I'm very excited about this friendship and like continuing to foster this. This was awesome.
Yeah, likewise, man. I didn't know you were going to be this cool.
Well, surprised.
Yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised.
Oh, thanks, man. I'll have links to where everyone can find you in the show notes. But do you have any parting words of wisdom for anyone? I mean, there's a lot of nuggets in this one, but.
Yeah, one thing. Okay, I do have one more thing actually that drives me fucking crazy. It'll go along the lines with what we were talking about before we got into the questions, and then I'll shut the fuck up. Going along the lines of like ego and perspective, I think that if people could just do one thing, you know, and just take a second, I think your viewers will appreciate this because they're probably already doing it, but other audiences aren't. And if people could just think of, we were talking about how we basically have our lifetime. I'm 38 years old. So what I've gone through in my 38 years of all my experiences and everything that I've encountered and circumstances I've faced, that has all formed what is my perspective of this world, right? That is my reality. There's 8 billion other people in the world. There's 8 billion of those, and people just can't take a second to stop and think like, hey man, this is only how I view things. People are so triggered by fucking everything, and they're offended by everything, even if it's the truth, especially the truth. And I hate that. And so that's a reason why I'm so isolated, is because I'm just over people's bullshit. And I think if people could just take a second and stop and realize like, hey, before I say something about this person, and this person does this and this person does that, like fuck, especially in the bodybuilding industry, just take a second to stop and think about what I just said. Like everything that you're viewing is only your view. Everybody else has their own view too. And you know, we don't have to all get along and sing Kumbaya. I don't like everybody. In fact, I don't like most people, but I can I can respect and see them for who they are and where they're at, and they're on their own journey and I'm on my own journey. That's it.
Yeah. Amen to that.
Yeah.
Matt, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you everyone for joining and listening. Please make sure to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and we'll catch you on the next one.